Sanhedrin Daf Ayin Gimel Omer Aleph. Mishnah. Let's go over the Mishnah. Ve'elu hein shematzilan osan b'nafshan. These are the people who you can save by killing someone. Harodef achar chavero lahargo. A murderer who's pursuing someone to kill. V'achar zachar v'achar hanara hamurasa. If a murderer is trying to kill someone, or someone is trying to rape another man, or nara hamurasa, or a woman who's married, you can kill the rodef in order to save the victim and to save the person from committing this crime of murder or of rape. Let's go to the gemarah. Tadarabanan minayin lerodef achar chavero lahargo. From where do we know that a person who is pursuing someone else to kill them, shenitan lahatzila b'nafsho, that you can kill this potential murderer to save the victim? Talmud lomar, the Torah teaches us, lo ta'amod al dam reyecha. The Torah tells us that you may not stand idly by the blood of your friend, which is the mitzvah to save the victim, and seemingly also giving permission to do all that's necessary to save this victim. Here what the gemarah does is it quotes a braita. Tana Rabbanon is the introduction of a braita, and the braita we know is parallel to the Mishnah, and very often the braita will be a little bit more full in an explanation, and the Gemara will quote the braita because of that which it adds to the Mishnah. So in our case, as very typical, the Mishnah tells us a din, matzilan otan b'nafshan harodef achar chavero lahargo. The Gemara quotes the braita because the braita not only confirms this din, but also quotes a source from the Torah, lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, which here's a pasuk in the Torah or Hashalem on the side of the Gemara from Vayikra, lo telech b'achil b'amecha, lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. This is the mitzvah to save someone's life when he's threatened. So far, so good. The Gemara continues and asks a question. V'halahachi da'ata? Is this pasuk coming to teach us this din? Haimi ba'yalei l'chedetanya. We need this pasuk for a different brisa. And now we are going to introduce another brisa. L'chedetanya for the brisa. Quote, Minayin l'roa es chavero shu toveya banahar. From where do we know that someone who sees his friend, shu toveya banahar, who's drowning in a river, o chaya gorarso, or an animal's attacking him, o listim ba'in olav, or bandits are attacking him, shu chaya vatzilo? From where do we know that in any of these scenarios, when you see someone under attack, that you're obligated to help them? Talmud lomar, lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. Don't stand idly by the blood of your friend. Save him. Step in to save him. So here we have a different brisa teaching us something which seems to be consistent with the first brisa and consistent with the Mishnah. The problem is, though, that our Mishnah and the first brisa is going one step further. In other words, one level is that there's a mitzvah to save someone under attack. Lo samod al dam re'echa. You may not stand idly by. That's a true halacha. Our Mishnah and the first brisa is taking it a step further and saying not only do you have to do what you can to save them, but you're even able to kill someone in order to do this. Not only should you step in, and not only should you do everything in your power to save them, but you even can kill the rodef to save the nirdaf. So here, both things could be true, but we would need a second source to teach us to go one step further. Since we need a source in the Torah for every halacha, which is dioraisa, so lo ta'amod al dam re'echa teaches us the base obligation to save. But how can that same pasuk also be extended to excuse murder in that pursuit. The Gemara responds in Hachinami. You're right, that's true. Lo tamud al dam re'echa isn't actually the source that you can kill the rodef. V'ela nitan lehatzilo benafsho minalan. What would be the source that you can save someone's life? Asya b'kal v'chomer minara ha'amurasa. We learn it in a kal v'chomer. What's a kal v'chomer? It's saying that we can't find, and there is no pasuk. There is no pasuk in the Torah to tell us this din, but we can extrapolate it through one of the Yud Gimel Midos Shatorah Nejeshes Behem, through a kal v'chomer, through logic, and therefore there's no need for a pasuk to teach us this mitzvah d'oraisa. The kal v'chomer is from Nara ha'umurasa, and here's the kal v'chomer in the classical language of the kal v'chomer. Ma Nara ha'umurasa shelo ba ela lepogma. A Nara ha'umurasa, the attacker is only trying to hurt her. Amar Torah nitan latila benafsho. The Torah nevertheless says that you can save the victim. Rodef achar chavero lahargo, a murderer, alachas kama v'kama. Even more so that you should be able to kill the murderer, him. Here there are a few things that need to be explained, and we'll do one at a time. Firstly, this is the classical language of a kal v'chomer, starting with the word ma, which usually would mean what, but in the case of a kal v'chomer, always is the first half of the kal v'chomer. Ma nar murasa, just like a nar murasa, you can kill the attacker implicitly. Even a rodev, alachas kama v'kama, even more so. That's the end of the kal v'chomer. Within the kal v'chomer, you have also an important language. Shelo ba ella. The lo and ella is a double negative. The nara hamurasa did not come only to harm her, meaning nara hamurasa only. In the case of nara hamurasa, it's only to hurt her. What does it mean only? In contrast to rodef, which is not to hurt the victim, but to kill the victim. In other words, with the kal v'chomer, the premise of the kal v'chomer, that murder is worse than rape. Murder is ending the life. Rape is to harm it, like Rashi says, lepogma, levaisha, to embarrass her, lezalzala, and to make light of her, to harm her. Even so, for that damage, Amar Torah nitna lahatzila benafsho. The Torah still says that you can save her life by killing the rapist. Certainly, I'll come back to the end of that Rashi in a second. Certainly, in the case of rodef, you should be able to do so. So the law that you can kill a rodef, the Gemara is suggesting, is based on the kal v'chomer from Nara ha'amurasa. Now, where did we ever hear about Nara ha'amurasa from? Where does that come from? We're going to explain it in a moment. But Rashi, doing what Rashi does quite often, is that this obvious omission that the Gemara did not tell us the source where Nara ha'amurasa comes from is an obvious ambiguity in the Gemara. So as often Rashi does, Kidi alfina lekaman mive'ein moshiala. Like we'll learn later on from the pasuk of Ein Moshiala. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry, says Rashi. We'll explain it later on. The Gemara will explain it later on. Rashi gives you the heads up because you might feel a little bit lost at this moment. Rashi says these omissions or these ambiguities of the Gemara will be explained later on. When it comes to the phrase Nara HaMurasa, however, here the Gemara has an assumption that you know what we're talking about. Nara HaMurasa is referred to in the Mishnah, Nara HaMurasa, and again in the Gemara, without much of an explanation of what a Nara HaMurasa is. The reason why the Gemara does that, and the reason why Rashi doesn't even bother to tell you what a Nara HaMurasa is because Nara HaMurasa is a phrase that appears in the Torah Shebechtav in the Chumash. And the assumption is that you're familiar with the Chumash when you come to the Gemara. And if you're not, you can look at the Chumash. Here in the Torah Or HaShalem, all the psukim that are quoted in the Gemara are quoted in full in the Torah Or HaShalem. Here's not, and as these psukim will be quoted in the Gemara later on, the Na'ara HaMurasa, Dvarim Perchav Beis. Here we have the whole section of Na'ara HaMurasa, and Na'ara Bisula Mu'urasa Li'ish, and essentially what this entire section is talking about is the scenario of a Na'ara HaMurasa. A Na'ara, halachically, is a phase of the beginning of adulthood for a girl, 12 to 12 and a half or so. Bisula is a virgin. Mu'urasa means that she's married or semi-married. There's a stage of marriage in the halacha that's a little bit unfamiliar or different than what we think about in contemporary life. But Mu'urasa, Erusin, is the first stage of marriage. Sometimes it's referred to as engagement, but it's really not exactly engagement. It's legally married without living as a husband and wife. In contemporary times, we do Erusin as the first stage of a wedding. Erusin is created by the husband giving the man giving the woman a ring and says to her, Hareat mikudeshet li b'tabat zu kudas Moshe Yisrael. She accepts the ring and agrees to the marriage in front of Eidim, in front of witnesses. And this is Erusin. This is the first stage of marriage. It's like engagement, except that it's actual legal marriage. In order to get to end the Erusin, a get would be necessary, an actual legal divorce. So essentially, there are particular reasons why the Torah is speaking about this very specific situation of a Nara, of a Basula, of a Murasa. But for many purposes, we can just think of the scenario as a woman who's married. And what the Torah describes is this woman being raped or being with another man, and describing all the laws of what happens, what the circumstances were, and what would be the punishment for him, for the man. For the man and for her, depending on the situation. In one situation, it was consensual. It was essentially an affair, in which case they'll both be punished. In the second scenario, is a case of rape. So therefore, obviously, umeis ha'ish asher shachav ima, the man would be put to death. Uvilanara lo saseh davar. But obviously, the Torah tells us that you do nothing to her because she's a victim. Ein lanara chet mavet. She has no sin deserving of death. And actually the Torah compares it. This is a victim. It's as if like a murder victim. Because she was found in a field, or in other words, in a secluded place. She essentially did or would have done everything possible, but it wouldn't help her. There was no one to help her, and therefore she's an absolute victim in this case. Not only that, the Gemara says, but if someone could help her, he would have to help her and even kill the rapist to save her. And if you kill the rapist in order to save her, certainly you would kill a murderer, a rodef, who's trying to kill a victim. This is the Kal V'chomer that the Gemara suggests as a source for the din of our Mishnah of rodef.